Hello and welcome to The World Now. We'll begin in the United Kingdom, where U.S. President Joe Biden is meeting with King Charles III at Windsor Castle. Earlier, President Biden met Prime Minister Rishi Sunak at Downing Street, where they spoke about the U.S. giving Ukraine cluster bombs. During the meeting, he described the U.S.-UK relationship as rock solid. Both leaders will meet again tomorrow at the NATO summit in Lithuania. There is more in this report.
U.S. President Joe Biden landed in the UK on Sunday ahead of a NATO summit in Lithuania later this week, which comes after several allies questioned his call to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. During President Biden's first visit to number 10 as president, he told Prime Minister Rishi Sunak that the U.S.-UK relationship is rock solid, with Mr. Sunak adding that the two countries were the firmest allies. Mr. Sunak said it was great for both countries to carry on their conversations and for the leaders to consider how to strengthen cooperation and joint economic security.
Two of the firmest allies in that alliance, and I know we'll want to do everything we can to strengthen Euro-Atlantic security. But great pleasure to have you here.
It's good to be back. You know, we've only been meeting once a month. We met in San Diego, Belfast, Hiroshima, Washington, here.
After concluding his morning meeting with the Prime Minister, President Biden headed to Windsor Castle, where he met King Charles III. Following Friday's cluster bomb announcement, the UK Prime Minister has not directly criticized his US counterpart, but on Saturday he said that the UK was one of the 123 countries signed up to the Convention on Cluster Munitions, an international treaty which bans the production or use of the weapons. Other US allies have gone further, however. NATO partner nation New Zealand said on Sunday the munitions could cause huge damage to innocent people, while Canada and Spain, both member states, added their own opposition to that of New Zealand. Germany, another signatory of the treaty and NATO member, said that while it would not provide such weapons to Ukraine, it understood the American position. Cluster bombs typically release lots of smaller bomblets that can kill indiscriminately over a wide area. Unexploded bomblets can linger on the ground for years before they detonate. The U.S. says it has received written reassurances from Kiev that Ukraine troops will not use the weapons in Russia or in urban areas. Members of NATO, a military alliance of 31 Western nations, will meet in Vilnius on Tuesday and Wednesday. Boosting ammunition stockpiles and reviewing defense plans will be on the agenda. Finland will attend its first summit since joining in April, and plans from Sweden to follow suit have been blocked by Turkey, which accuses it of harboring terrorists. Ukraine harbors its own ambitions of joining NATO. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has previously accepted this position, while requesting a signal that his country will be able to join the alliance when the war is over. He is expected to attend this week's summit.
For more on this historic visit, Global Affairs Analyst Calvin Dark joins me from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us on The World Now. Well, quoting President Biden, rock solid. That's how he's described the U.S.-UK relations. But how solid do you think this rock is? Because both countries don't exactly completely agree on the U.S. president supplying cluster bombs to Ukraine.
Hi, good to be here. I think that the relations are rock solid, and when you look at the differences that both countries are experiencing now, they're very small in relation to the larger picture of U.S.-UK relations. But when it comes to the issue of the cluster bombs, we have to remember that, of course, every country has their own policy of whether or not they will use them. The United States is not a member of the treaty that forbids them. Is a lot of opposition here, mostly from Democrats, about Biden using them. But we have to remember that for the UK and other allies that, have maybe disapproved, it's easy to disapprove if you're not having to make the difficult decision. I think one of the things that Biden said over the weekend is key, that just because he agreed to provide these cluster munitions to Ukraine doesn't mean it wasn't a difficult decision. And one of the things that we're thinking about here, and I wonder if this is something that Biden will convey to the Prime Minister in the UK, is there's a humanitarian concern definitely with using cluster munitions, but there's also humanitarian concern to allow Russia to continue to use them without providing them to Ukraine to defend themselves. So it's a complicated issue. I think they'll probably discuss it a lot today and tomorrow during the summit, but the differences won't make that big of a difference in the greater scheme of U.S.-UK relations.
All right, but the opposition's coming from member countries of NATO. Do you think it would in any way alter America's decision to supply these bombs?
No, I believe that for this decision, any deterrence, I guess, or any reason that Biden wouldn't have wanted to use them came internally. Like I said, you've got Republicans, interestingly, who have been pushing for Biden to provide these cluster munitions for a while. Democrats, some have told Biden not to because of the humanitarian concerns. But as Biden said, this wasn't done, without the allies' knowledge. He informed them, and it wasn't to get their approval or permission, but just to let them know this is the choice that America had taken. And I think you're seeing allies that don't agree with the decision are still respecting it, as this is the best way that the U.S., in its view, our view, can help Ukraine in this war with Russia.
All right, let's talk about Ukraine's plans and efforts to join NATO. That's been on, but as it stands, the U.S., which is one of its strongest allies, is of the view that all of that should wait until the war is over. What impact do you see this have on President Zelensky and the war that is raging in his country?
Well, I think that Biden is right to say that Ukraine can't start the process of joining NATO until the conflict is over, simply because of the Article 5, NATO's Article 5, obligations for common defense among its members. Because if Ukraine were to, for example, join NATO now, that war now becomes between Russia and the NATO alliance. So that is why Biden is saying the war has to be over, and it has to have a peaceful conclusion before that can happen. But now that doesn't mean that Biden or others don't support Ukraine joining, and it doesn't mean that the summit can't issue a signal, I think is what Zelensky referred to it, that they would be open to Ukraine joining. But joining before the war is over will be dangerous, because then it brings into a whole other level of engagement between NATO and Russia.
And as it is, Sweden is also in the news for wanting to join NATO, but that move is strongly being opposed by Turkey, although President Biden is looking to, weigh in and get him to agree to Sweden joining. But what do you make of the development?
Well, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how that topic is dealt with at the summit. I think a major dynamic about that will be that now Erdogan is post-election. And we all know that leaders have certain stances that are a lot more firm during election periods than maybe they are after it. So I think that may play a factor. And I also believe that this isn't in a vacuum, that this decision by Turkey, maybe they will come to the United States position if, for example, other issues with the Kurds and Turkey's mediator role with Russia, there could be some give and take in that. So I'm hopeful that that will be resolved during the summit, or at least in the right direction.
All right, then Global Affairs Analyst Calvin Duck, thank you for talking to us on TVC News.
Thank you.